Does it sound right? It sounds like an old phone, right?
Sounds great. I think you should do the whole thing like this.
How does it sound like an old phone?
It's an extremely elaborate setup that Levine and Pedo hooked up. They wired a microphone into this that goes into a separate device. It's a little annoying to use. I have to switch my microphone to use it.
Oh, that's so annoying, man.
They're two wild and crazy guys.
They're crazy.
Welcome back to Talking Too Loud, the show that is serving up the loudest takes on building businesses, top-notch products, and unforgettable brands. I'm Chris Savage, the co-founder and CEO of Wistia, and this week, we're getting loud about building for accessibility.
Very timely topic, sir.
Yes, very, very timely. The European Accessibility Act just went into effect, so we're going to dig into that. But we're also going to dig into what happens when accessibility goes beyond compliance and becomes foundational to building great products.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So today, we're talking with someone who has gone very deep in this work since the beginning. You might know him if you know Wistia. If you know me, that's right. We have Brendan Schwartz, Wistia's co-founder, CTO, my best friend, and he's here. Welcome back, Brendan.
Oh, thanks for having me. I was wondering if I'd be introduced or I need to self-introduce, but that's great.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, come on. This is a professional show here.
We introduce you. That's how it goes.
Great to see you. Hi, Sylvie.
Hello, Brendan.
All right. So before we dive into accessibility at Wistia, let's talk about the bigger picture. So the EAA just went into effect. For people who don't know what this is, Brendan, can you break it down a bit for us? Like, what's happening across the pond that also affects this pond?
I'd say yes, this affects the whole world. So the European Accessibility Act is some landmark legislation that Europe passed in 2019, but it just took effect. So usually there's this big gap to allow people to understand the law, figure it out, be able to get into compliance. And now that it's in effect, that means that the EU can basically start fining and penalizing companies who are not compliant. And so this law, it doesn't just apply to businesses in the EU. It applies to any business that is doing business in the EU, which is many. So we're in the software world. That's probably
unless you're blocking European traffic from going to your website, you are going to have to take this seriously.
So these are, and they're accessibility compliance standards for websites, mobile apps, just like e-commerce platform. It applies to video, certainly. So we'll talk about that. Basically all kinds of things. And the goal is to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access to content and services to make the web and the way, which is the way that we all basically, like the primary way we do business and interact with each other is the most inclusive and accessible it can be.
It's awesome. So can you talk about, I mean, there's legal implications to all of this. So the companies that don't comply can face fines and penalties, but can you talk about this more as a builder? Like, what does this mean at this moment for product teams?
Well, I would hope this isn't the first time you're hearing about accessibility.
Surprise, surprise.
I would say, at least from the angle of the world of software, and maybe this is a bit of a tangent, but a number of years ago when GDPR went into effect, which was, again, Europe's landmark data privacy regulation, I would say software companies were pretty mixed. You know, maybe people would say they cared about data privacy, but did they actually build with that in mind? I would say probably no for the large part. And that really galvanized the industry to take a harder look at data privacy and to comply, because some of those, either the fines were scary. I mean, if you're a small or medium company, I think it's going to be less likely that you're not the first people that the EU is going to go after. But certainly if you want to do business with bigger companies, you need to comply with this. And so that really got things moving, which I think is really great for the world. More data privacy is good for consumers. And I think the same thing applies for accessibility. There's a lot of, I think, companies who it's like they'd view it as a nice to have, maybe like, oh, if we have extra time in what we're doing, we could apply some of these rules and make our software more accessible. Or so I think some people think like, oh, this doesn't really apply to me because maybe I have a small set of users who use my software, and I don't know, you're not like thinking about it that much. So I feel like this should do a similar thing in GDPR and galvanize people to think more about it. And I would also encourage folks, like, I guess we can get into this more, like our journey related to accessibility.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think I probably had, like, long ago thought of it maybe more naively or myopically of like, yeah, like, I don't know, you know, we're a small team. We don't have the resources to do this. How are we going to do this? Does it really matter? Like, you know, we only have like 10 users right now, and they're, you know, their biggest problem.
But accessibility is so much of it is it's making it easier for somebody to interact with your product, right? So,
which inherently makes it better.
Yeah, I think if we live in a world where easy is important, easy is good, then accessibility should ultimately make, I think, you should be making and designing things that are more clear, easier to interact with, easier to understand where you are. There is definitely additional work you're going to do, but ultimately you end up building a better better product. And I do think in a world where, not to always go back to AI, but I think in a world where AI is going to make it much easier for even more people to build products. We know this already. Vibe coding is real. It's going to, over time, we're going to have more competition, more options, more things. I think the easiest thing is going to win. And if you're working on accessibility, that is going to really matter. Also, by the way, if you vibe code something that's not accessible, you're going to have to make it accessible. So you might as well start early. It's like one of those things. It's like if you don't have any tests in your code and you build it for many years and you have to add the tests, it's going to be a lot of work to add the tests. This is similar. Like if you build it from the get-go to make it accessible, you're going to be much better off than if you wait.
Yeah, I think the best analogy, at least for software, that I found is related to building responsively.
Yes.
So, you know, before mobile existed, or when screens were all landscape, right, there was just people built one way. And then when mobile became big and there were just a proliferation of different screen aspects and sizes, some people just waited and didn't really do anything. But the teams that jumped on it and started adopting some of those practices got the benefit of that a lot earlier. And I feel like the same with accessibility. It's not really that hard to build software that's accessible. There's a learning curve, like you said, to it. But I do think AI is a huge part of that, both in helping build and also, you know, some of the standards can be a little bit intimidating. Like, so for the web, it's WCAG is the standard for accessibility, and there's different levels of it. It's really easy with like asking ChatGPT or something. Here's what I'm trying to do. Can you explain how this applies to me? And
yes,
to do it. It makes it a lot easier.
You mentioned before, Brendan, that like early days you were thinking about accessibility maybe naively or myopically. Was there like a moment where you were like, oh, it's got to be top of mind, whether that came like from team meetings or from customer feedback?
I guess maybe I was being generous to myself or ourselves earlier by not thinking naively about it. It was probably just weren't thinking about it at all, if we were being completely honest, when we started Wistia.
Which I think is like very common for...
Yeah, it's going to be lower on the, like, if you're just starting and you're like, I have nothing, I have no customers, I have no audience, I have no, you know, it's not going to be the first thing that you think about. I think that's normal. For us, the first thing, I remember this story, it like clued us into it, made us think about accessibility in a different way, is we were probably, 5 or 7 years into the business. Like we had a fair number of customers, and a customer emailed in and said, hey, I'm colorblind, and this feature that you have in the product, we had this feature we still have it, called video heat maps, will show you how each individual viewer is watching a video. So it's green if they watch it once, and then it turns yellow if they watch that section 2 times, and orange and red and so forth. Like, I'm colorblind. I can't, this heat map thing seems cool. Like, I saw the video on it, but I can't
tell any of these colors. Yeah.
Could you please adjust this so that I can see it? And we're like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about this at all. And so it was like, of course we were going to do that. And it was an interesting design challenge. And so Joe, who was our lead and only designer at the time, took that upon himself. He built this cool prototype to try all these different colors and then validated it with the customer. And so not only did we solve the problem for him and anybody else who was colorblind, we just used higher contrast colors, which made that part of the product more legible to people who weren't colorblind, or if you have screens that are maybe lower contrast, it wouldn't look good anyway. So I think, Chris, you said this before, or maybe you did, Sylvie, or both of you did. But by building a lot of these standards and building to be more accessible makes the product better for everybody. And so I thought that was that changed the way we thought about it.
That's a really good example.
Let's go to some of the recent features that have come out of this work. So can you walk us through some of those things? I know we're getting more specific into video here, but like things like the extended audio descriptions and stuff like that.
Well, to take like one step back, the other big moment for us, which is related to video, is so for WCAG standard, which is accessibility standard for the web. I think, again, driven by customer feedback, we wanted to make our video player more accessible to be able to meet the WCAG AA. There's like different levels of the standards, but AA standard is one that a lot of organizations use. And so we put a big effort into making our video player, which is like the core part of, if you're going to use Wistia, right? You need your videos to play on websites. That was really important to a lot of organizations that we worked with, if they're government organizations and they're mandated to do that, or just companies that really care about accessibility. And this was, I don't know, can you remember, Chris, when we did this? It was a while ago. So there's a big learning curve for us, but we did that. We worked with some really helpful outside consultants to validate that the player met those standards. But this is related to that. I'll get to the audio description piece. The thing that was really frustrating about that is we have this accessibility checklist in the product that shows you if you meet that standard. And so by default, there's like all these things checked because like it works well with the screen reader. Our color pick, we built a accessible color picker, so you could only let you pick high contrast colors, and et cetera. So you get all these like check marks, and there's a few other things that are easy. And then we also added automatic transcription and captioning for all videos. So that used to be a thing you have to order. Now that's just done. Everything is checked except the last checkbox, which is a lot of content needs an audio description or extended audio description, depending on what the content is. An audio description is an additional audio track that is describing what's happening visually in the video. If you want to get one of these things, it's pretty complicated. Like
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's expensive. Even more than it's expensive, I think a lot of companies would be happy to pay for it. You have to go find a contractor to do this. The standards around the files and stuff aren't super clear, and then you have to load it into. So we supported it for a long time, but it was like, good luck. You want one here? Like upload it here, but good luck. And so I'm really excited that a few months ago we added an ability with a partner to one click and order it. So it bills you through Wistia to your account, so it's really easy. And then it's going to be done by humans, a professional audio description to go along with your content. And if you're like me and you want to see all those green check marks so you are actually accessible, it's helpful. And the European Accessibility Act, you need to be WCAG AA compliant for a lot of businesses. So this is going to be something that comes up, and I'm really happy that we can make it easier for companies when it comes to using video to meet those standards. Sounds like an advertisement here. It's a little hard.
Well,
I mean,
just because we have the best product on the market and are way ahead, and like that's not a problem. It's just we're just talking the truth here. No one's talking their book. I mean, I guess we are. But well, let's. That was a better description than the question I was asking would have prompted. So that was great.
And another very new feature for us that I know you're particularly excited about, Chris, is video dubbing and localization.
Yeah, no. So video dubbing and localization is super cool. And basically what it is we are taking your video, using a bunch of different AI models to transcribe it, translate it, clone the voice of the people who are speaking on screen, if it's one person, multiple people, and then bringing that back together, actually redoing the lips of the people who are speaking, and giving you other versions of your video in other languages. And it's a very magical experience. Like, I encourage everybody to try it. There's like free, I'm just going to stay on this as an ad kind of mode. There's free dubbing built into your account if you're a Wistia customer. But the thing that's so magical about it is when you see your own voice, your own intonation, you talk in another language, it feels like you speak that other language. That by itself is cool. But the other thing that's really interesting is we actually have all the data on how people, when they're browsing your website, what language do they have their browser set to? And you'd be surprised by the number of people who are probably already looking at your content where their native language might not be the language that your content is in. So for us at Wistia, for example, we mostly market to English-speaking countries, but only 68% of people who click play on our front page video have their browser set to English.
That's a bigger number than I thought.
Same. That was super surprising.
Yes. And so when you go in and you look, you're like, there's a lot of people who are, their native language is Spanish, French, German, all of these different, I mean, it's every language out there, but different distributions of this. And so for all those people, they have to watch the captions. They have to watch with the captions on. You can do a translation of the captions. That's great. That's built in. You can do that. But the next level thing is like, I think giving people something where they know that, hey, this actually is in my native language, but it's keeping the intonation. I know it sounds like the person who's talking. So it's kind of your best chance at making something that really resonates and works. And the localization includes everything in the player, so it's all done automatically for you. So we'll switch the language of the video dub, of the captions. If you have calls to action, things like that, that all works as you switch from language to language. So I feel like it's really cool because it's such a magical feature. It wasn't even possible to think of this, I think, like 4 years ago. But now by taking this feature and combining it with all the data that you have, you can make a much, much better, much more accessible experience for all those people who are coming and hitting your website. One other cool thing about that I've noticed is I've talked to a lot of people who have said, this is so cool. It makes me think I should localize everything that I'm doing. Because it's almost like this seemed like the hardest one to do. So if you weren't going to do this one, then it's like, should I have my whole site be in Spanish and have none of my videos be in Spanish? But if you could do the videos in Spanish, like the site is actually not that hard to do. So I'm really excited to see also how this just changes how people think about internationalization in general.
It seems like a lot of people, when they think about accessibility, they think about the user experience, but there's like huge business impact, right? Like you're opening Wistia to a whole new swath of customers.
Well, I feel like this is a good time to talk about the shoes, Sylvie.
The shoes. We got to talk about the shoes.
Oh, I'm wearing the shoes.
Let's see the shoe.
Oh, you're wearing the shoe too?
For those who are just listening, Brendan and Savage have taken off their shoes.
That's
do you want to describe this, Brendan, or do you want me to?
I can do. Well, this is another advertisement for this company. These shoes are from a brand called Kizik. Strange name, but they started. They were the most accessible shoe, so people who had like mobility issues or motor impairments. It's a shoe that you can put on by just stepping into it. So the back has this hinge, and you just kind of step down. Your foot slides right in. You don't have to lace it up or tie it, but it looks like a shoe. It has laces.
This is like Velcro 2.0.
It's
exactly.
like the ease of Velcro with the elegance of laces.
It's even easier than Velcro. It's more
because you're not bending down.
You're not ripping that Velcro off and on, and there's no loud noise.
Okay, so it starts off as the most accessible shoe. How did Kizik find you, or how did you find it?
A friend of ours I don't know how he heard about it. I think via accessibility. And they used to look like you'd imagine the most accessible shoe looking, like they were pretty technical looking, maybe. I don't exactly know. And then at some point they were like, oh wait, like just anybody might not want to lace their shoes because it's fabulous not to have to bend down. You're like taking the dog out or whatever. You're trying to get the kids out of the house, or you just stand out. You don't have to bend out.
You just want to slide out.
Anytime you leave the house, you might wear them.
He'd be the friend who's always out the door the fastest, and he's like, look at these kids.
You want to be that guy.
But it's also, it's just funny to that point. Like when it started, it had the mechanism that kind of keeps the heel solid, because you can do this thousands of times, right? Like a lot of shoes, you would step on the back of it and it would not be resilient. And these, like, it stays resilient, but they had the mechanism for that on the outside of the shoe. So it's very obvious. And then it kind of went into the inside, so you kind of can't tell. And it's just incredibly comfortable, but you don't realize how many times that it's like these very tiny changes in a user experience that add up to a very different behavior. Where I have lots of shoes, most of my shoes are not Kizik shoes, right? But I wear them so often because you're going thinking I'm rushing out the door. I want to do this thing. They're comfortable. They look great. Boom, put them in. And if they weren't an accessible shoe, they would miss out on this, like the most fundamental difference that they have. So I just think it's such a cool example of something that started with really great intentions and ended up, I think, building a better user interface.
Yeah, just a better product for everybody.
Yeah.
By building something accessible.
I need to get a pair. It's a great example.
You do.
Oh, you're going to
What am I doing? What am I doing?
What are you doing right now? I mean, you're going to be tying your shoes later or something? That's insane.
With the Kizik example, and then I think like earlier on when we were talking about the heat map and being sort of responsive to customers, it feels like accessibility is going to be a real differentiator in companies across the board. Do you feel like that's true? Wow, I just pulled a Savage. Do you agree with me?
Do I agree with you?
Do you agree with me?
I disagree with you.
You disagree.
Because I think it used to be the case because it was pretty rare that companies would be ahead on this. And my hope and prediction is that it is going to become more table stakes because of this legislation and other things. I think other, hopefully the US follows suit and other places do that. But again, if you're a software business and you do business in Europe, which is most companies, you're going to see bigger companies demand this, and then companies are going to have to do it. So it's like you must do it. Just like responsive design, it would be pretty bizarre not to do that this day and age. Or maybe things like security type thing, like SOC 2 or other security or like ISO security standards. Those used to be like a nice to have, and now they're table stakes.
I think the only part where it's going to really make a difference is like in the next couple of years, as people realize they're out of compliance, they're going to have to switch to the accessible providers. So if you're making a lot of videos, you need to be accessible. You need something like Wistia. And that's true for all the different products that you use. So I think until people are caught up, it's going to take some time, and it will be really important. And then eventually, I agree with Brendan, it'll become just table stakes. I mean, there's a lot more features we could talk about that are incredibly accessible that we built here at Wistia, but I think we should stop the talking like an ad part of this and say, thank you. This was fun. What a delightful episode we have here.
Delightful.
This was good. Thanks for having me. I love talking about accessibility.
We know you do. You won't stop.
I forced you to put me on the show to talk about it.
They demanded it.
Just kidding. I was actually invited.
You got the formal invite.
That's it for this episode of Talking Too Loud. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you consume the content. And don't forget to email us at talkingtooloud@wistia.com with any suggestions, ideas, feedback, jokes, or book recommendations. And we'll see you soon.